So Sergeant Swan, tell me, how is it, or how do you feel about being one of the first black people to be in a white-dominated society as far as the business community? How did you feel going into that? Did you feel like you was at a disadvantage?
Well, when I went away to school, I first went to North Carolina's all-black school, at high school. When I went to college, I went to an all-white school in West Virginia, very prejudiced society up there in the mountains of West Virginia. I had to learn how to deal with white people up there. And when I left the school, I left with a reputation of being able to get on with people regardless of their prejudices. When I returned home, when I told my parents I wanted to go in the real estate business, they said to me, you know, there aren't any blacks per se where you can find jobs in real estate business, and it's gonna be hard for you to get in the white. I said, I intend to be in the real estate business. It took me 5 weeks convincing Benny Rigo, who first employed me, to employ me, but eventually gave in and employed me. I realized that, you know, I had to sort of get through some hurdles, and the first one I had to do was to know my product. So I spent a lot of time in the field getting to know my product and getting to know the people who owned the products before I started to sell it. Once I got to know the people and knew where the money was and knew where the product was, I had to convince people to sell the product. And since I was going to primarily sell to black community in real estate, I had to be able to make sure that finding things that they could afford, number one, and number two, making sure that there was an opportunity for them to buy things they could afford. And so I had to get to know the white community. I had to get to know the black community, so I joined every organization I possibly could that was available to me to join in the black community, whether it was the Masons, whether it was Blue Water Anglers Club, PhD Club, or whether it was eventually the Yacht Club, the Dinghy Club, Coral Beach Club, Mid-Ocean Club, Chamber of Commerce, the Employers Council. So that what happens was that I was pulling these forces together while I was sort of building my product. And yeah, were there prejudices? The answer, absolutely. There were barriers, but what I tried to do is overcome those barriers. I remember when I had an office down Front Street as the first black to have an office on Front Street working for Benny Rigo, I noticed that white people would come in and they would shy away from me. So one day I said to Benny, Benny, I need a white secretary. He said, what's that for? I said, I'll show you something. I said, I'm tired of people coming in with me and not really participating with me, but they'll participate with you. And I said, I want to place her in a position where she gets the information from these people. And I'm going to sit where I could hear the conversation, but they couldn't see me. So I was able to then understand what they were trying to do. And then I'd make it a point somewhere along the way to go and visit them or find them, meet them, and talk to them about it. And eventually convince them it was okay for me to deal with their real estate. So you have to use techniques. Prejudice don't go away. And Bermuda, it's prejudice, but also it's fear. Whites have their fears of being ostracized by their neighbors or by their friends, particularly back in those days. You know, and blacks didn't have a lot of real estate, so, or didn't have even, they were considered to be hotel workers, working in clubs and so forth, entertainers. And so you had to lift the financial profile of the black community. And so I was able to convince people to sell their real estate. If they owned an acre, I split it into 4 lots of land or 5 lots of land, and then sell them off to people who didn't have much money and try to find a financing to help them to build a home and so forth. And that worked. And so and then when it came to finding mortgage money, it was another challenge. And that's why eventually, when I was in my own business, I set up the savings and loan company so I could give people a second mortgage. There's no way they had the money to buy. So I'd get a first mortgage, and I'd take the risk of the second mortgage for people to be able to buy homes. And as you know, for 40% of those homes that I built in the island were sold principally to black people for 10 years, which gave people a base that they would have never had in Bermuda, and also encouraged people to save their money so that they could be able to have something to buy something with or do something else, educate their children and so forth. We didn't have pensions those days for people. So I used to say to people, buy a house, you can put an apartment on it, the income can act as your pension. And so it was a lot of innovative thinking that was going on in the process. And people trusted me, and I never sort of let their trust down. And the end result is I ended up with 18 contractors, all working and doing things. And I told them that one principle is, if any stealing goes on, you're automatically fired.
Okay.
And you can't sort of have a business that people feel as though, well, they can make more money if they just got something off a truck or got something somewhere and they put it in your business or your project, and they made money, and then your reputation goes down the tube. So we were very specific, and every employee knew that if their boss did it, they were putting them at risk, and I fired people for it. And the end result is we were able to build quite a reputation of paying our way, getting the job done, honoring what we did. And the end result is people kept the business going. And fortunately for everybody was a winner in the process. And when the financial institutions, the savings and loan company, got into trouble because of a statement made by the Minister of Finance at the time, I was able to make sure that everybody got their money back. So it's honoring, always trying to honor whatever you commit yourself to.